I think I'm going to start with a song, if that's okay. And it was written by two friends of mine at Tassajara, and I've been singing it for a long time, and it's called Our Hero. There's a book called the Lotus Sutra that you really ought to know about. A holy book that has the power to remove all fear and doubt. And this book tells the story of a man who means the world to me. He could just as well have been a woman, except for male hegemony. So they call him the Bodhisattva, never disparage, the Bodhisattva, never despise. And I'm making it my life's ambition to see the world through his pure eyes. I will never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. Where you only see your weaknesses, I only see your strength. I would never despise you or put you down in any way, because it's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. I love you. Now the Bodhisattva, never disparaging, lived countless kalpas in the past, in the time of the counterfeit Dharma, and he was something of an outcast, because the monks and nuns of his time, they were noted for their arrogance and vanity. These were the folks who exercised great power and authority, but my boy, he never concerned himself if they treated him like a freak. He just bowed to everybody equally, and these are the words he'd speak. I would never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. Where you only see your weaknesses, I only see your strength. I would never despise you or put you down in any way, because it's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. I love you.
Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm Jeff. Today's episode is a little different. It feels a bit like sitting down with someone whose life has been quietly shaping the world around them.
Hozan Alan Senauke is one of those people.
A Soto Zen priest, a folk musician, a poet.
He lived at the Berkeley Zen Center, where he later served as abbot.
He helped lead the Buddhist Peace Fellowship and co-founded Think Sangha, bringing together people asking how Buddhism meets the world.
He came of age in the 1960s and began practicing Zen in San Francisco not long after.
And over the decades, that practice became something lived, not as an idea, but as a way of being, showing up in places of suffering, staying in relationship, and not turning away.
And we were fortunate to sit with him before he passed.
As you listen, you start to hear a thread running through his life, a kind of vow, a North Star, as he calls it.
I will not abandon you.
I've been teaching for a long time in the Upaya chaplaincy program. And one of the things that we invite students to do in the course of the program is to arrive at, I think, what Thich Nhat Hanh called a North Star precept. You know, it's like the North Star where if you look at the Big Dipper, it always points to the North Stars. You always know where you are headed or where you're headed in relationship to that star. So it's a wonderful exercise, if you haven't done it, to try to understand what your North Star precept is. What guides you? What is it that you return to when there's confusion or dislocation? So for me, my North Star precept is, I will not abandon you. And that's what the Bodhisattva, never disparaging, is teaching. I will not abandon you. That whole lesson, which is a pivotal chapter in the Lotus Sutra, is driving this home. And I think it comes up as an issue for all of us, because there are places where, by habit or by feeling, we wish to turn away. And to have that as a North Star precept, not to abandon, allows us to reorient ourselves. So where it came about for me was in sangha life here in Berkeley. There was one person in particular who was very troubled, was at risk of being out in the street multiple times, and was always looking for people to rescue them. And I'm sure that we've all experienced people like that in our lives. And what this person wanted was only everything. They wanted to be relieved from suffering. They wanted you to do it. And they communicated the sense that only you could do it, which is not such an unusual feeling. And so my wife, Lori, and I came to the place where we said to this person, I will not abandon you. And that didn't mean that we were going to rescue them or save them, but that we would not turn away. Every engagement that we have with suffering doesn't necessarily mean that we have to embrace it and merge with it. In fact, when we do that, we may not necessarily be helpful. So we have to understand our own space, our own boundaries, and have a safe distance, but not turn away. And when you have that, then you build relationship and you can approach. But I will say that not abandoning, not disparaging, is not necessarily easy all the time. And at the same time, I can report that we remain in relationship with this person, and they have been in relationship to our sangha in Berkeley now for 25 years. Even though it looked like their very existence was touch and go for a long time, there's something about us that can be very fragile and at the same time tough, that you might be able to draw on unusual and unseen strengths at the same time as the conditions of our lives may be fragile. I rely on, actually, the Three Tenets as a guide. They lead me through this process of not abandoning. So entering the space of not knowing in any situation and bearing witness to what is happening in that circumstance. What's happening internally, what's happening in the environment around me. On another level, it's like, well, how does this all work? What systems are unfolding here that would be helpful to understand? And then the third tenet is an appropriate response. There's a koan, and it's what is the meaning of the Buddha's lifetime of practice? And he says, an appropriate response. And that response includes love at every level or at any level. Love as, say, laid out by the four Brahma-viharas. But it's just what response comes out of this space of not knowing and bearing witness. And that's been really, really important to me. I teach it a lot, and I teach it to myself. So, like many of you, I have been in spaces of suffering. The first time I was in Bangladesh, I was alone, and I took an automobile rickshaw into town. And once you got into Dhaka, which is absolutely humongous city, enormously poor, and seemingly anarchic. And I remember sitting in this rickshaw. The initial response was to be appalled, and the secondary response was just completely to break into laughter because it was so over the top. And, I think about my experiences in refugee camps on the Burma border now going back almost 30 years, actually. And then working with Ambedkarite, ex-untouchable communities in India, which is a relationship that has been ripening now for about 15 years. And there's part of me often that wants to turn away. And then I let the North Star precept guide me, and I turn back towards. And I have wondered, why am I called here? What calls me to this? And some years ago, I realized if I think about what I've encountered on the Burmese border and in India, it reminds me of my grandparents. And, about 110, 115 years ago, my grandparents' parents came to New York. And they lived in what would be called slums and tenements. And so if you go to an Indian slum, what you find are a whole population of people who came from a particular village or region in a rural area. Well, in my grandparents' and great-grandparents' time in New York, they all came from the same town in Eastern Europe. And they lived in this village. I realized that's why I'm called to bear witness, because it's not so far from the reality that my grandparents and their parents lived under oppression and threat and violence in Eastern Europe. And it's like, so that is in me deeply. And so part of the bearing witness is to recognize what's working in me internally. And then, how is that connected to the wider world? When I'm teaching in India or in some other places, it's really important for me to enter in a state of not knowing, which does not mean stupidity. It means inquiry. It means, how is it here? What can you show me or tell me about your life? And it's really important because that's also a way of deconstructing our own perceptions about other beings, other cultures. And it's wonderful. But what I'm learning, it's like drinking out of a fire hose, is how deep the roots are of even modern engaged Buddhism in Asia. And how widely people were influenced by others who have been pursuing similar interests. So we read of figures like, we read of Thich Nhat Hanh, or we know of Thich Nhat Hanh and we see his books, but we don't know about who was influencing Thich Nhat Hanh, what sources were there that he was drawing from. And they're large, and they go in unexpected directions. They go back, some of them go very directly to a great figure at the early 20th century in China, Taishu, who I had never really heard of, or his disciple Yin Shun, who is basically the teacher, the kind of source influence for all the Taiwanese Buddhist humanism centers, which are another expression of engaged Buddhism. And for Taishu, who I referred to a moment earlier, Taishu was very interested in classical anarchism. And so there are Asian roots and there are Western influences, and all of these things are really intertwined in such a rich way. The same thing is true of Dr. Ambedkar, the pivotal figure of Buddhist revival and Buddhist re-identification of untouchable peoples in India. And I would say, I call myself an Ambedkarite. And I've been studying this for quite a long time, and I relate so closely with those communities. But then you find, Ambedkar didn't arise like Venus on the half shell rising from the waves. He had intellectual forebears. And we all have intellectual forebears. We look to Bernie and CPI, but Bernie did not arise out of whole cloth. There's a meeting of all of our teachers, and then there's what we bring to it to make it authentic ourselves, to make it an authentic experience for ourselves. Ultimately, we have to bear witness to ourselves. And the appropriate response is to be ourselves, fully honoring and respecting the traditions or the sources that we come from, and yet not to be imitative. To find where that leads, in the same sense that when I think about lineage, this is true for each of us. For me, I feel like I am at the convergence of two major rivers where it becomes a new river. There's the Japanese Soto lineage that flowed through Suzuki Roshi and through my old teacher, Sojun Roshi. And then there's this Eastern European Jewish lineage that flows through my grandparents and their parents, and they meet and meet. I have to manifest a new river that contains the waters of each of those rivers, but is a new river in and of itself. And to be authentic about that expression and at the same time fully human.
Looking back at Hozan's life, what stands out isn't just where he's been in life,
but how he has arrived there. Whether in refugee camps, in communities on the margins, or in his own sangha, there's the steady commitment.
Commitment to stay, to bear witness, to not turn away.
And we feel fortunate that we had the chance to sit with him, to hear these stories directly.
Because what Hozan offers isn't something distant. It's something we all can practice right where we are.
In our own communities, with the people we struggle to understand.
In the moments when it would be easier to walk away.
Thank you for taking time to listen to the Peacemakers Podcast.
If this conversation resonated with you, we invite you to explore how you can take action in your own community.
You can learn more at www.zenpeacemakers.org.
And we'll see you in a few weeks for our next episode of the Peacemakers Podcast.
The Peacemakers Podcast is a production of Zen Peacemakers, an international organization whose mission is to realize our oneness and relieve suffering through contemplative social action. You can find the full video recording of this podcast and more at www.zenpeacemakers.org and go to our media library.
There's a book called the Lotus Sutra that you really ought to know about. A holy book that has the power to remove all fear and doubt. And this book tells the story of a man who means the world to me. He could just as well have been a woman, except for male hegemony. So they call him the Bodhisattva, never disparage, the Bodhisattva, never despise. And I'm making it my life's ambition to see the world through his pure eyes. Now here's a chorus which we'll repeat a number of times. I will never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. Where you only see your weaknesses, I only see your strength. I would never despise you or put you down in any way, because it's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. I love you. Now the Bodhisattva, never disparaging, lived countless kalpas in the past, in the time of the counterfeit Dharma, and he was something of an outcast, because the monks and nuns of his time, they were noted for their arrogance and vanity. These were the folks who exercised great power and authority, but my boy, he never concerned himself if they treated him like a freak. He just bowed to everybody equally, and these are the words he'd speak. I would never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. Where you only see your weaknesses, I only see your strength. I would never despise you or put you down in any way, Because it's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. I love you. He never read or recited the scriptures much. He only liked to practice respect. But the monks and nuns of his time, they didn't meet it like you might expect. Instead, they cursed him, and they reviled him, and they wished that he would go. Because they all had self-esteem issues, like everybody else I know. So they beat him and pelted him with clubs and stones, tried to drive him away. But he just run off to a safe distance, and he'd turn around and say, I would never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. You only see your weaknesses, I only see your strength. I would never despise you or put you down in any way, because it's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. I love you. So it went on for years and years. He was the target of scorn and abuse. Still our hero, he shed no tears, nor did he ever wonder what's the use. Till he came to the end of his natural lifespan, he lay down fixing to die. And he heard the Holy Lotus Sutra being preached up in the sky, and his life was extended for millions of years. He's living to this day. And in the pages of the Lotus Sutra, you still can hear him say, I would never disparage you or keep you at arm's length. Where you only see your weaknesses, I only see your strength. I would never despise you or put you down in any way, because it's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. Yes, it's clear to me, I can plainly see you'll be a Buddha someday. I love you.